Dear God, we are grateful for the Sabbath as it affords us an opportunity to slow down and unwind and contemplate the grand vision that you have had for not only our planet but for the universe of setting up a government, a kingdom that meets everyone's needs, uh, that ensures that everyone is happy and is safe. It's my prayer that as we go through our discussion together today, it might make that vision clearer to each and every one of us, and we might uh, continue our prophetic work with greater conviction. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so as you can see on the screen, I want to continue the study that I presented in Wales, which was titled Thoughts on QFMG. Um, So before continuing with the other part of the study, we'll do what will hopefully be a brief review. I might build upon a few points that we did talk about after some feedback I got following the presentation, but hopefully my intent is to finish this study today. If it doesn't, it's okay. Um, so there were, I think, three examples, biblical examples that we looked at to try and make a point about symbols and how symbols can be taken out of their immediate context and applied in a different history. And not only in a different history, they can be applied in a different way. And by different way can mean many things, but in this context, what I meant is a different waymark in a different history than the one that it was applied at in the first history. So, can anyone tell me the three examples that we looked at? I think it was three. Ideally in order of how we did them. If not, it's okay, but I would prefer order. Number one.
We looked at Jacob's trouble, didn't we? Jeremiah.
Sorry, could you say it again, Debbie?
Yeah, we looked at Jacob's trouble, didn't we?
Yes.
Yeah, so that was
So
in Jeremiah 30, I think.
thank you. So the time of Jacob's trouble. That was the first one. Thank you, Debbie. Second one.
We looked at X27. It's Simba, sorry.
Was it X27? I
273.
I think that was later on. That was the actual like part of the study. I meant the examples before we went to X27, if that makes sense. Maybe my request wasn't clear enough. I meant the examples we gave before getting into X27.
We looked, we looked, oh, sorry.
Did someone say something? I didn't hear that.
I don't know.
Could you?
Yeah, I was going to say let them go ahead. I was going to say something.
Blessing Titus has
Matthew 2.
yeah, Rosie's saying something. Not
Yeah,
sure.
I can't hear what Rose, we can't hear you.
Something.
Matthew
Matthew 2.
2.
Matthew
Yeah.
2.
Matthew,
And
yes.
Titus has put Jeremiah 30, Rachel weeping. Actually 31.
Right. So it's the same example.
I was going to say Jeremiah 31, the 70-year captivity.
Yeah, it was actually 31. Thanks.
Yeah.
It wasn't Jeremiah 30, it was 31, yes. So the first one is Jeremiah 30. Thank you for that, Debbie. So Jeremiah 30 is the time of Jacob's trouble. Then this one, Matthew chapter 2, which is the story of Rachel weeping, which is the one that Titus talks about. Rachel weeping. And that was the next chapter. Jeremiah 31. Okay, and the last one, before we went into the one that Simba mentioned.
Joel, the one about the
Rose has put
Joel 2.
Rose
Okay,
put
yes,
Act,
thank you. Thank
Rose
you,
put Act
Rose,
2,
and
yeah.
thank you, Charity. So
Yeah.
it's Acts
Okay.
chapter 2 and Joel. So thank you to you both.
Blessing, can you see the chat? Or do you want me to read it out?
If you could read it out, I would
Okay.
appreciate because I
No
might
problem.
miss it. I can't see the chat.
Okay, yes, you've got
Can't see
people.
the chat. I can't see any hands. Um, just
Okay.
yeah. So if you could help with that, I'd appreciate. So Acts and Joel, which was the story of restoration, the restoration of God's people. Okay.
And that was Joel 2 and 3.
Yes. Uh, Joel 2 and 3. Thank you very much. So can anyone tell us the point of going through these examples? What was the key thought, key idea of going through these examples?
Sorry, can I
Without
ask?
without getting
Really
into
quick?
any of them in detail, just all of them, what do they have in common?
to to show the license that prophets can do something to prophecies in the past and make application to their time without necessarily yeah, that's how I would say. Yeah.
I think you were saying that they all had the same story,
Mhm.
which was the king of the north, destruction, Babylon, maybe something like that. I remember you saying something about they were all the same story.
Okay, thank you. So Titus said, Titus, what did you say again? Sorry. Could you just repeat what you said?
Oh yeah. I said like prophets could make application of what was in the past without necessarily the prophecies being related to the issue. Like they make secondary applications, and if they can do it, then we also can do it.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so we were speaking about how prophets applied histories that were before them. I'll just summarize it that way. Is that a fair enough summary, Titus? Yes? Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
And
Blessing,
Debbie
Rose has
added and said they were speaking about the same story. So one of the reason that they could take whatever history and apply it to their time was they had a recognition that the history they were looking at, that they were extracting a symbol from or a number of symbols from, was the same story as what was happening with them in their time. So that's what we spoke about. Did someone at Emma, you wanted to say something? Or
Yeah, sorry, Rose had just written in the chat. She said audio is not clear, but she says symbols can be applied at a different way, Mark, based on the point or context of the study.
yes. So you can apply symbols at different points or waymarks depending on the context of the study. That's correct. So we did these three examples because we wanted to show that if you take Acts 27, 273, and the story of QFMG, um, if you can prove that the story that you're looking at, the end story or the fulfillment, is the same as the history, then you can extract the symbol and apply it. And one of the most important bits of it is when you do apply it, you don't necessarily have to take all the details. The other details would be irrelevant to the application you're making. So you can say that with the time of Jacob's trouble, you can see that with the story of Rachel weeping, and the story of Acts chapter 2. So,
Blessing, can I ask a question very briefly on your summary?
okay, before you do that, sorry, let me just answer a quick question because I see there was a question about the format. So in general, I don't mind if people speak, because I guess I'll be probing people to speak. Um, if it's manageable. If it's not manageable, then we might have to move to raising of hands. But generally, I don't have a problem when, you know, people speak. I hope that answers your question, Charity. Curtis, go ahead.
When you go to Jacob's time travel, Matthew 2, and Joel,
Mhm.
in your study, in your words, if you could, like how would you distinguish between the symbol that you're taking from there and the structure of the story? Does my question?
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I get your question.
Okay.
I don't want to answer it right now. That's
Okay.
okay.
That's fine.
Yeah, but I've registered your question.
Okay.
All right. We'll probably get back to it soon, actually. So I just wanted to remind ourselves of what we did look at. So we looked at these three examples. The reason why we looked at them is to identify how prophets applied symbols from prior histories, and that they did not necessarily take the details of those histories. Um, then we went to Acts 27 and looked at Acts 27. Can anyone tell me what we said about Acts 27?
Actually, Debbie put in the chat, I don't know if this was before you said that though. Basically, we looked at these histories and noticed they're all the same story, the story being of old leadership replaced with the new king of the north.
Oh, I missed that. Because I guess I didn't ask the question, but thank you for
Oh.
answering before I asked. Yes. So we looked at Acts 27, and in particular, the 273 non-Christians. And we also mentioned something based on foreknowledge, pre-knowledge. We didn't get into the details of this, but we did highlight that Acts 27 in different ways spoke about this story of a transfer of power or leadership, transfer of leadership or power. And the examples that were given were Paul, for example, took charge of the ship when they were in a crisis. There were two seas that were used as symbols to represent the fall of one setup and the establishment of another, Cilicia and Pamphylia, which one means overturning, I think, and the other one means a nation of every tribe, and that was applied to the fall of the sixth kingdom, the rise of the seventh. Excuse me. And then we took the 273 and went to Numbers chapter 3. So this connected with Numbers 3. And in Numbers 3, what we see is a transfer of leadership, where the firstborn that had been the setup in Israel was being replaced with the Levitical priesthood. But in the story of that replacement, where you have this new system being set up, um, there were 273 Levites less or short. And the application that was made by Elder Tess is that that number, prophetically speaking, is made up at the end. So may or may not get into the details of how that application was made, but the point was you can see this 273 number repeatedly associated with this story of transfer of leadership. Acts 27 had so many examples of it. So by the time you get to 273 BC, so there's 273 BC, what you have is the rise of Rome in the Mediterranean, rise of Rome. And what it was signaling is a transfer of leadership from the Greek world to the Roman world, putting it simply. That's what was taking place there. So it's consistent with the application of the symbols, with the story. And what we basically identified in the first study is that the leader, the face of Rome at that time, was QFMG. So in 273, he was not a consul, but he had been before. He was a very significant figure in Roman politics and Roman leadership, and particularly in establishing diplomatic relations between Rome and an acknowledged power in the region, Egypt. That recognition, the dialogue that happened between Rome and Egypt included QFMG. So you could mark QFMG as a symbol of this leadership. We draw that principle, an established principle from the Bible that the king is equal to the kingdom. So QFMG can be equated to Rome. So when you take QFMG as a symbol, you can use him as a symbol of the rise of Rome. And we took that and said the same story happens at the end of the world. And what we said is the rise of the seventh kingdom, rise of seventh kingdom is the same story as the rise of Rome. So QFMG can tell you something or inform you about the rise of the seventh kingdom. So that's what we went through. Okay, so any besides Curtis's question, are there any questions about what we went through, what we discussed last time?
Yes. I don't know if I think my question will be related to Curtis' question, which was the structurally how where you placed the time of Jacob's trouble. Yeah.
Okay. So could you explain your question a little differently? When you say structurally, where you place the time of Jacob's trouble, what do you mean by that?
Of course, at the time, I think the conclusion was that the time of Jacob's trouble was within the 70 years or the 70 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that was the conclusion. And then you said without, if anyone will need clarification of that, then we will discuss it. So I have a clarification. I need clarification for that. Yeah, because the time of Jacob's trouble to me seemed to come after the 70 years. Yeah.
Oh, so your question is similar to Monica's question at the Wales Camp meeting.
Yeah.
I see. So, unfortunately, I won't get into the details of that today as well. The reason being, I think that would be a study on its own. Um, but the general understanding or accepted understanding of the time of Jacob's trouble up to this point is the 70-year captivity. Perhaps we could have another study on it another time. So, unfortunately, I'm sorry, Titus, I won't be able to go into it today because of time.
I know.
Okay, so I want to expand a bit on this issue of story, just a bit before moving on. And this speaks to the question that um, Curtis asked, which I'll try and repeat in my own words and see if that's what he's asking. So you've got a symbol, and this symbol happens to exist in a particular context. But he didn't use the word context, he used the word structure. I think that's what he used. And his question was about the mechanism of taking this and ignoring that. Is that it, Curtis, before proceed?
Um, so the question was in two parts.
Okay.
One part is what you described.
Mm-hmm.
And the second part was with the three examples that you gave, what were you describing as the symbol and the structure in those examples?
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
I see. Okay, so part
Leads
one.
on to the part that you just described.
Okay. So part one, which is the symbol and the structure. So I want to explain a bit how I understand this issue of story when I say the same story. I don't mean you can see just random or rough similarities. What I actually mean is this, the story is the same. So I want to borrow a term from Elder Paminda that he used in some not so recent studies, but not too long ago. And it's this concept concept of looking at history panoramically, having a panoramic view of history. And then you can also have a dispensational view. Does everyone remember this discussion? Yes or no?
Yes.
Can anyone tell me what he meant by panoramic when he spoke about a panoramic view of things?
It's more like a history spanning a longer period of time or a progressive history, if I can put it that way.
Yeah. So you look at history progressively, so I'll just note that down there. Panoramic. So you look at history progressively. What else did you say? You said progressively and what?
I
I think
don't
you said
remember, but like a wider scope. Yeah.
span long period or something. I think that's what you
Yeah,
said.
it's like a wider scope.
Yeah. Anything else about panoramic?
Hello? Hello,
Yes.
please.
Yes, Simba.
I think it's like a threading a story from a very big perspective. For example, we can look at the birth of Christ maybe from Genesis until you reach to Revelation.
Mhm.
My thoughts.
Yeah. So would you agree that this progressiveness is associated with the threading that you speak about?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
I would use a word that you've just used, which is in contrast to repeat and enlarge progression.
Okay, that's there already. Anything else? And panoramic. There was something, at least that's what stood out for me. I won't say it's the most important thing, but it did stand out for me. I thought it was important, which he did say about panoramic. How do you relate to symbols when you look at things panoramically?
They should be dynamic.
Uh, Looking for a different word to dynamic. Dynamic doesn't quite describe it, but you're almost
Flexible.
there. Flexible. You're almost there.
It's all out.
Okay, let's see who else is.
Perfection, completeness.
Not perfection. Okay, think about it this way. If we're going to tell a story, say we want to tell a story of Elder Emma, and it starts here up to here, right? It's the story of the life of Elder Emma. What's important about this person that we are discussing, Elder Emma? In order for it to be the story of Elder Emma from start to finish, what must she be? I'm trying to give you clues without making it too easy.
She must be I don't know, an important figure alive.
Okay, she's important because the story is about her. But I'm saying, in order for it to be a story about her, from here to here and here, ah, and then here, what has to happen? What's an important property?
Maybe there's a theme that you want to talk about, Elder Emma.
We talk about
Yes, but
pastoral
I'm saying a
presence.
property of Elder Emma herself.
Has to be the same person.
It has to be the same person. Can we all see that? That it has to be
Natalie's got a hand up, bless him.
the same person here, 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 and here. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Natalie has a hand up.
Yes, Natalie. Go ahead. Natalie?
Can you hear me?
Uh, you're sounding a bit muffled.
Can you hear me?
A bit better.
I was just thinking about the study that Al's Commander done about the daily, about the continuum, the, you know what I'm saying?
So what did you want to say about the daily?
Sorry, what did you say? Sorry, what did you say, Blessing?
I'm asking the point you wanted to make about the daily, the story
Oh
of the
yeah,
daily.
I think I just remember that in the study about it being the, you know, the continuum. Is that a word? All the way through.
The continual. Yeah. So it's the same all the way through. That's the point, yeah?
Yeah, Al's Commander already said it.
So the word that he used, I think, was generic. That's the word I was looking for. Generic, I can call it symbols or symbolism. It has to be generic enough to be identified as the same at point one, point two, point three, point four. So you have to demonstrate, if this is a panoramic view of the life of Elder Emma, you have to be able to demonstrate that this is the same person at every point. There has to be characteristics about her that are the same from start to finish. So generic, does that make sense? So for example, one example of a generic property is her name. Her name is Emma, the beginning, in the middle, and at the end. It doesn't change. Her name is the same.
Blessing, is
Some,
that a bit like the same as the studies in Revelation? The symbols have to be the same.
I'm not sure what you
God
mean.
and the beast and the woman. When you look at 12 and Revelation 17, or Satan, and forget that.
Okay, sorry, I'm not sure exactly what you mean, so I'll leave it for now. But do we all get this point about a panoramic view identifying a generic symbol or generic symbols? It can be more than one symbol. Are we together on that one so far? Yes, no?
Yes.
Okay. Then with dispensational dispensational view. What was said about that?
It's specific to that
Specific.
time. Yeah.
You said specific to what?
To that time. Yeah.
It's time sensitive, if I can say. Don't know if that's the most accurate way to put it, but it's applicable in that way at that time. Yes? Anything else?
Yes.
I'm not sure it's repeat and enlarge typology. It has to be related to.
I want to avoid using repeat and enlarge. I think it might complicate things. So if you allow me to leave that one out.
Yeah.
Hi, Blessing.
Yes, Simba.
I think dispensational, we can look maybe at literal understanding of the story that we are looking at.
What do you mean literal understanding?
That is, for example, if we are looking at the story maybe in Ezekiel, we
Mhm.
are focusing based on what Ezekiel is saying in that particular time. So we are going to look at that story in a literal way without making an application based on that time that the writer writes the story.
Can people still hear me?
Yes, I can hear
Yes.
you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, I dropped out for a bit. I think my internet is a bit unstable. Could you repeat the last part of your point? I'm sorry.
All right. I was saying if we are looking at the literal looking at the story in literal terms, I'm saying, suppose we are looking at the books of Moses, we are just looking at the story that he wrote during that time, based on that specific time. That is the literal understanding of the scriptures that he wrote during that time.
Okay. So do you think specific would fit with what you're describing? Specific to the time.
Or something of that sort, maybe.
Okay. All right. So we'll work with that. So using our example of Hildema again, something
Blessing, could I
dispensation.
just make a comment? Sorry.
Yes. Yes. Go.
I think that was Simba that just said that related to dispensational. The way he just explained it. I'm pretty sure that definition would be the same definition as a panoramic view as well. The way he just described what dispensation was. So even though you said yes, I'm only making the point that if you describe dispensation in the way that he did, it's the
Mhm.
same definition as panoramic view. So it wouldn't get us any further. I don't know
Okay.
if that would help, Simba, when you gave that definition. It ends up being the same. So it wouldn't be a particularly useful definition to describe it that way because it has the same properties as panoramic.
Okay, thank you. Is that okay with you?
Sorry, Blessing.
Yes?
I just wanted to understand. Is he speaking about the literal part?
Elder Paminda, do you want to elaborate a bit more on?
I didn't want to distract from the study. The fact that we say literal or not wasn't really the point because
Okay.
sometimes things are literal and sometimes they're not. It's the fact that the properties end up being the same definition that you would use for panoramic, because for a panoramic view, you would still have a literal story. Emma is a literal story, and in that definition, it's a panoramic view of her life. And if you said, well, I'm going to take a dispensational view when she was an adult, it's the same story about Emma. It's a dispensation. They're both literal stories about Emma, because the dispensational view has to be about Emma.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you. So he just gave the example I was going to give about Elder Emma, which is fine. I'll just put the number I wanted to put, which is an example of an age. Elder Emma at 55. That would be a dispensational view of her life. You are picking up something specific about this story, and you're focusing on that. So I think we get the point because it's just a review. I'm borrowing terminology or a concept that has been already put in place in this movement and trying to bring it into my study to make a point about what I meant when I said the story has to be the same in order for Ellen White to do what she did, or Matthew to do what he did, or for Peter to do what he did in the book of Acts. Are we together about the direction that we are taking, where we are going with this? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. So what I meant, even though I didn't have time to explain it in that presentation, by story, is that the story of the captivity. So I'll draw a line here. So what I meant is that the 70-year captivity in Babylon, captivity here, has to be the same story as the story of the close of probation. Close of probation, second advent. This is what Ellen White says is Jacob's time of trouble. It has to be the same story. That is, if you look at this panoramically, you should be able to identify the players involved here as the same. So if you can establish that they are the same, if you picture a slider, you know what a slider is. Well, I don't know another example I can give, but a slider is basically, something that can move vertically or horizontally, but in this case, picture it horizontally, and you've got this object at any point, and it can move either to the right or to the left. So it's flexible enough to move in both directions, and it can land at any point within this space or within this range. Did what I just say make sense?
Yes.
So this is your slider. You can slide it to the right, you can slide it to the left, and because it's within this range, there's a lot you can do with it. So if you look at this story, the story of the 70 years of captivity, who was in captivity?
Jews.
So Israel. Israel was in captivity. And who was the captor? The one bringing trouble, fighting God's people?
Babylon.
Babylon. So you've got this story of a conflict that's happening between Babylon and Israel. Yes? That's the conflict that's going on. And why are Babylon and Israel fighting in conflict? Two reasons at least.
Expanding territory?
Um, the biblical reasons.
Oh,
Okay.
because Israel did
Sorry.
not listen.
Go ahead, Charity, and then was that Simba or someone else after? I didn't pick up wanted to speak, but you can speak after Charity. Make your point again, Charity.
I said because Israel didn't listen to God or the
Because
prophet.
Israel didn't listen to God. That's one reason. Which story? What's the symbol of that story?
What do you mean? What's the symbol?
The common symbol that we use about Israel not listening to God.
Sorry, I think I'm not getting it.
Anyone to help Charity?
Was it due to their rebellion?
So it is rebellion. What I'm asking is
25.
what study or prophetic symbol do we use to represent that story of God's people being in rebellion and then they're punished for it?
Is it the scattering?
Scattering.
20.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So the 25-20. Scattering, 25-20. That's reason number one. That's the symbol of reason number one. Who wanted to speak after Charity? Was it Simba?
I wanted to talk about rebellion, like what you
Okay.
said.
So 25-20. All right. So that's reason number one. Reason number two?
You said
The,
reason number 2 for what again? Sorry.
for Babylon versus Israel.
King of the North, rise of the King of the North.
Um, I don't know if that's a reason. You're right.
Can I try?
Sure.
God was helping Israel.
God was helping Israel.
Yeah.
That's why they were fighting.
Oh, that's why Babylon. Oh, you said biblical reason.
Yeah, because I want the biblical reason why Babylon and Israel are fighting. One is the church was in rebellion, that Israel was in rebellion. So God punishes them. You've got the 25-20. But there's another reason that Babylon and Israel are fighting.
Oh, sorry.
Conquest.
Curtis, did you want to say something?
I said conquest.
Could you elaborate on what you mean?
That Babylon is rising as a world power, and so they need to conquer entities that stand in its way.
It's the same as
So
well.
Yeah, it's the same as what Charity said.
Is
I'll say it's not the answer I'm looking for because what I'm saying is Babylon and Israel are actually fighting um, without focusing on who the winner is, what the outcome is. Because
You're talking,
obviously Babylon wants to win, and Israel will fight us just because Israel wants to win. So I'm saying, why are they fighting? What's the biblical story behind that? Maybe my question's bad.
Debbie
you're
put
talking, yeah,
oh,
sorry.
Debbie, go
Yeah.
on.
Go on, Emma, go on.
Oh, she just wrote in the chat expansion and imperial power.
So who wants to expand and have imperial power?
Babylon.
Babylon does, and I'm saying Israel does as well. They want to expand and they want to have imperial power. So what's that story about?
It's
Both of them
about,
are fighting
is it all
for
about leadership? King of the North leadership?
Great controversy.
great controversy.
Right.
So I apologize if my question was not framed well enough. I'll take responsibility for that. So you have a story where Israel's being punished, and as part of the punishment, Babylon's rising, takes over the world. We get that. So that's one story. The other story is the story of the great controversy. Who does Babylon represent, by the way?
Satan's kingdom,
So that's Satan's kingdom. In Israel,
God's kingdom.
God's kingdom. And what I want you to see is whether you are back here in the BC time period. I think this was 607. So whether you are in 607 to 537, not being accurate on the dates, whether you're here or you are here at the end, can you see that it is the exact same story with the exact same players? Because who do you have at the end? Who's Babylon? That's my question.
USA.
MAGA.
Okay, I wanted a prophetic symbol.
Babylon.
You talk about
17,
two and horn power, something like that.
Revelation 17,
Seventh kingdom.
Revelation 17 symbol.
Oh,
Woman.
sixth and seventh?
Seventh
No.
kingdom.
Seventh kingdom, right? Seventh kingdom. And who's Israel? Who's Jacob?
Movement?
14K, God's kingdom.
144,000.
Glorious holy man.
Blessing, would we say Israel in 537 was God's people?
Israel in what? Sorry?
537 was God's people? Weren't they just like with Rome now? Or am I getting mixed up?
They were God's people.
Okay.
Jeremiah says it.
All right.
Yeah. So, seventh kingdom, that's Babylon. 144,000 is Israel. Do we agree?
Yes.
So, this was the beginning of the trouble that God's people were going through. Beginning. Oh, yes. Maybe you might have gotten confused, Natalie. Paminda's pointing out that 537 is BC. I tried to put a negative sign there. Maybe it's not clear enough. BC, not AD. Yeah. So the point I was making is this is the beginning of the war. Right, this is the start. So this is the start, and this is the end of that story. Babylon and Israel in conflict. When it starts, Babylon has the upper hand. When it ends, who has the upper hand? According to the Bible, great controversy, according to Ellen White, who comes out victorious in the end?
Israel.
Israel, right? So going back to the story that we looked at camp, which is Ellen White takes this story, which is about captivity and scattering, and takes Jacob and the fact that Jacob's in trouble, and she extracts that, and instead of putting it where, with our knowledge of reform lines, would seem to be the reasonable place to put it, which is the period before a reform movement, because there was a reform movement after 537. So instead of putting it there, she puts it inside the reform movement and she puts it at the end of that reform movement, right? And whether she understood it to the level that we do today, I guess is not the point. The point is what she did was legal because it was based on the same story. Right? If you look at the story panoramically, you can actually show that from start to finish, this is the story of the 2520 covenant, broken and restored. It's the story of the great controversy, God's kingdom and Satan's kingdom fighting. So what you can do is you can take, in this case, the symbols, which would be Babylon and Israel, and their conflict with each other. And with the slider, you can move it from one end to the other end. You could put it at in the period of darkness, which would be somewhere here, maybe, according to the line that we have above. But Ellen White didn't put it there, she put it here. And I hope we can see that it was correct what she did. And depending on where you put it, it will also determine the details that you pay attention to. So when you take it a symbol, in this case, the example, the symbol is Babylon and Israel and their war with each other. You take it out of one dispensation or out of one context, and then you put it in another context, it won't look the same. It won't be exactly the same. Whilst the panorama will show you properties of them being the same, generic, once you start getting into the dispensational view or the context or this new structure, the specifics can change. So you can actually ignore the structure of a context because I'm saying structure and context is the same. You can ignore it and focus on the structure and context of where you're applying it because of the point you're making. So if the point you're making is about the end of the war, which is the point that Ellen White is making, the end of the war between Babylon and Israel, then you know that captivity doesn't apply because God's people are not in captivity. You ignore that, right? So the fact that it's, I guess, period of darkness is captivity, I'm saying. So you'd ignore that detail and you know that it doesn't apply here. Babylon getting the upper hand wouldn't be the case because at the end of the story, the victorious power, according to the scriptures, according to the spirit of prophecy, according to inspiration, is Israel, not Babylon.
Sorry, Blessing.
So, yes,
Are you saying in this line that you have where it has start and end, when viewed panoramically, when Babylon comes against Israel, this starts a captivity that doesn't end until you get to where you have that second box? Or are you saying that Babylon versus Israel in that first box has its story contained in that first box, and there's a captivity that starts and ends there, and then you get to the end, and then there's a story that starts and ends from COP to Second Advent? Like, how are you describing that image?
ignore captivity. Babylon versus Israel is a conflict, it's a war. So the war
Okay.
starts here and it ends here,
Okay.
not captivity. At the start, Israel loses a battle, so
Okay.
they end up in
Right. Yeah.
captivity.
Got it. Yep.
When you get to the end, Israel is powerful and wins that battle, and in winning that battle, wins the war.
Okay. Got you. I just
Yeah.
wanted to understand what those boxes were that you had there, but I think that.
Yeah, so the start and end is the story of, it's this story here, great controversy, war.
Mhm.
Also, you can say something about the covenant, but I don't want to get into the details. I just wanted a hopefully simple conceptual example of what I mean when I say the story has to be the same. It really has to be the same.
Mhm.
Panoramically, you have to show that this is something that starts here and ends there. And then with the slider example I use, you can move it around. And depending on where you land the slider will determine the how you use those symbols, the details of how that symbol is applied and used.
So that slider
Can I? Oh,
gets your panoramic view and chops it into dispensations.
Yes.
can I also ask something about that slider?
Okay.
So that slider in the story of the Great Controversy, is it the different battles that you find in the different places?
In this case, yes. So what you'd be marking is there's a battle in 607 to 537, just generally speaking. There's another battle in 538. Uh, maybe let me say before 538, you have another battle, say in AD 31, right?
Mm.
The cross, around that time. You have a battle there. And then you move it forward, you've got one 1798. You have another one in 1863. So depending on what dispensation you're focusing on, will determine the details that are applicable and the ones that are not. So you don't just ignore things because you like ignoring them. You ignore them because the point where the slider has landed demands that things happen that way. So, like I said, if you land the slider at the end, like what Ellen White did, it demands that you say captivity doesn't matter. You have to ignore it because God's people are not in captivity. They are fighting with Babylon, but they're not in captivity, and they win that battle. So the details of the dispensation guide your application of the symbol, what you take and what you leave. Does that
Uh,
answer your question? Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah, it does. Thanks.
I
Could,
All
think,
right.
I think
So,
Natalie has her hand up.
could I ask a
yeah,
question as well? Oh, after Natalie then.
yes, after Natalie. Go ahead, Natalie.
I'm okay, thanks.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, hold the phone.
Um, it's not about Curtis's question, but for me and maybe some other people, I wonder if you could sort of recap this line that you've drawn, if I've understood correctly, began with um the symbol of Jacob's time of trouble,
Mhm.
and you've used a slider, which I found really useful, and you've got already said two boxes, but you've got a 70 on the left and time of trouble on the right. And this
Mhm.
was constructed by paralleling those two stories or events. So could you just recap? I think that's how you started. One is captivity, and we have you haven't put a word for the end one. And then in red, you've got start and end. And then when Curtis asked the question, you said start and end isn't about the boxes per se. It's a an if I don't I don't know if I can say panoramic. It's the story of the complete story from the beginning to the end. It starts and ends. Could you just tell us so that we're clear how you go from the creation of the captivity at the beginning, it's parallel at the end, and then write start and end, because start and end was a complete story, and the other two are two stories, which are these sliders, if I can put it that way. I don't know if that makes sense. If it's, I'm basically looking for the steps that you went through so that I can really get it clear in my mind how the steps that you've gone through to create that start and end story. And if I could just add one more, you've got the beginning and the end. Is there one in the middle somewhere? Can that's or in this specific example, was there only two?
So in this specific example, I focused on the two, but there's multiple stories in between, from my understanding.
Okay, so and we could call them a Jacob time of trouble.
Yes.
Okay, so could you just go through the steps of how you constructed that line, that
Okay.
story? I don't know
So
if you call it a line.
yeah. So in short, the principle that I used, I guess the first primary principle that I used is alpha and omega, or beginning and end. Identifying where a story begins and identifying where it ends. And there's characteristics about the start and the end of something. The start is like an introduction, and in an introduction, it contains all the properties that you need to understand the end. And the end is a repetition of what was said at the beginning. However, there will be nuances to the conclusion or the end because the body of the story, picture it as a narrative, an actual story, a book or something. The body of that book, the details that are in between, they enhance and influence or impact the summary that you're going to give at the end. So I used Alpha and Omega to begin with. And having identified that Babylon comes into contact with God's people, starts fighting them, around this point, not specific to the date, but around this point, you expect that story where Babylon and Israel are in conflict with each other to come to an end at some point, meaning the war has to come to an end. And there's stories that point to the end of this war between Israel and Babylon. And when you identify what the end is, because it doesn't have to be this end. I guess this is I'll call it the final end. There can be other ends, which, like for example, the end of the 70 years, that's an end, but it's telling a more localized story, which would teach you something. You could mark the end of the 2520 as an actual time prophecy. It would teach you something. This one is, like I said, maybe the final end or the end of the Great Controversy. It's not quite accurate because we know the Great Controversy continues beyond the Second Advent, but it is an end. And I guess some of the work had already been done for me in terms of how I approached it. Ellen White had already given me this information, which is God's people have a final conflict with the forces of evil, which I'm calling Babylon. So, having established that the start and the end are the same, you can connect them. And if you can connect them, you can develop or thread a story that is the same from start to finish. So you can actually establish that what's happening at the end and what's happening at the beginning is telling a story of what's happening all throughout. I don't know if that answers your question, if that's clear enough.
It is for me, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So I'm looking at our time and it's moved quite a bit, which is okay. I had wanted to go through these other two examples, but I am reluctant to do it now because there's points I wanted to make about QFMG. Hopefully, the example we've given about Jeremiah 30 will suffice. Are we happy with that example, with the further elaboration of that example?
Can I ask about that example?
Okay.
Just going back to my first question,
Yeah.
which was we're going to take a symbol from the start, and that symbol is, yeah, what's your symbol you're taking from there?
The symbol in this case is there's three: Babylon, Israel, and the fight between them.
Okay. So we're going to take that
The
symbol
war. Hmm.
out of a structure, and that structure you're suggesting is captivity.
Yeah,
That's the context.
yeah,
And you're saying that I could take those three symbols and go to a different context where the context is not captivity anymore,
yeah.
and I'm going to use them in a different context.
Yes,
I think that's a good point, because often when we do line upon line between these two things, we often make the context the same or the structures the same. And so, for me at least, that was interesting that you're pointing out that the contexts are not the same, they're different contexts, and it reinforces your point.
yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So
Thanks.
it answers your question?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So can I just say something as well? So when you're talking about the different symbols, you're basically saying at the end, the the symbols that you took as Babylon and Israel and the fight between them.
Yeah, so it's
Those
Babylon
are,
and Israel, really.
Babylon is a symbol, Israel is a symbol,
Yes.
and the fight between the two is also another symbol.
It's the story. The fight between them is the story. So Babylon's the symbol, Israel's the symbol, and then you've got the fight between them being your story.
And that's what you're picking up and putting at the end
Yes. Because what
as
you're
being.
saying, because what you're saying, like with the slider here,
Mhm.
uh, sorry, moving the wrong thing. Um, is you're saying this is the range in which this thing can move. So your slider is like your symbols in this case. So I'm going to take Babylon and Israel. I know that there's a conflict between them. So the range is like the conflict. And you're saying at this point, this is what the conflict looks like. It looks like captivity. But when I move it to the middle, it'll look different. Then when I move it to the end, that conflict again looks different. So I will ignore the context of the beginning because Babylon had the upper hand. And I will focus on the conflict at the end where Israel now has the upper hand. So some of the details of that symbol are not relevant to me. So not only can I ignore them, I'm required to ignore them. So you're actually required to let go of captivity if you're going to do it properly.
Blessing.
Sorry, Natalie, I just want to be sure that Charity is okay. Like she understands.
Yes, yes. So basically when you're taking the story of Babylon and Israel and wherever you're going to land, that history will tell you what it looks like, as opposed to you taking everything with it, like sort of the baggage, and then just placing it there where it doesn't fit.
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead, Natalie.
So with the slider blessing, you don't need the middle bit. You don't need to know the information like in the study of Elder Paminda 1, 2, 3. You don't need to know the information in the middle to know that we're going to take away, we're not going to use the captivity in the beginning. We're going to look at the battle at the end. So you don't need any information from the slider in the middle.
So this illustration I've just made is not the same structure necessarily as the 1, 2, 3 that Elder Paminda developed. However, the information in the middle is helpful, which is why a panoramic view can be beneficial. Because I think if you understand the panoramic story, that's what gives you the confidence, if I can say, that what's happening at the end is different from at the beginning. Because if you picture a story, like I said, I think I talked about the introduction, the body of a story, and then the conclusion. The body is important because it elaborates on what you introduced. And some of the events, themes picked up within that story will modify outcomes. So by the time you get here, everything that's happened in between will have an impact on this. So, as a simple example of important information, that's not the close of probation, is, I'll draw it a little small here, is the time of the end. So, the time of the end is an important piece of information in this panoramic story because what it says, what Daniel actually tells you in his story, is that Israel has been losing the war, if I can say. They've been, let me say, Babylon has had the upper hand in this conflict since the captivity. And it has different iterations, of course. We know the gold, the silver, the bronze, etc. So Satan's kingdom has had different iterations. But when you get to the time of the end, something changes. That's what Daniel 12 explains. That when you get to the time of the end, Israel uh, starts gaining the upper hand. There's a reversal of fortunes. So this information is important for you, this one here, to understanding how you are going to understand the fight between the seventh kingdom and the 144,000 and what we're calling Jacob's time of trouble here. What happens at the end? So you have Jacob's trouble at the start, you have Jacob's trouble at the end, which is your Alpha and Omega. The story starts here, it ends here. But the outcome is very different. And one piece of information that has helped you to know that the outcome is different is the time of the end. Does that make sense, Natalie? Can people still hear me? Am I still connected?
Yes, that makes sense.
Oh,
So she's put the thumbs up. Curtis has got his hand up. I think.
okay. Looks like we're not moving from the example.
This is my
Yes,
long one,
Curtis.
sorry. It's just something tripped me up as you were going through your explanation to Charity. Which
Charity.
was with your three symbols, Israel, Babylon, and conflict.
Mhm.
The third one, conflict. How are you, like, can you describe that as a symbol and not as context or structure?
So I said conflict is the story. It's your panoramic view of this story. That's what I said when I was speaking to Charity. I know originally I bundled them together, Babylon, Israel, and war, but
Okay, so your two symbols are Babylon, Israel, and
in Israel,
conflict
yes,
is not a symbol.
it's not the symbol.
Okay.
It's your panoramic view, if you will.
Okay.
Does that answer you?
Kind of, because what I'm trying to figure out is, can you take those two symbols outside of that story? Because I think what you're inferring is your panoramic view provides a specific context.
Yes, your panoramic view is the story of the interaction between these two. So think of this example we gave here. We are tracing the life of Emma. So your
Sure.
panoramic view is the life of Emma. And
So can you
then,
take the symbol of whatever symbol that you have in the life of Emma, which is the context is the life of Emma, and there's a symbol that exists within the life of Emma. Can you take it out of the life of Emma and use it somewhere else completely different? Or are you constrained to the story?
so I'm saying you're constrained to the story, the panoramic story. You're not constrained to the dispensational one. So the dispensational one would be Emma's childhood,
Okay.
Emma's teenage years, Emma's adulthood. Emma is a parent. So those are dispensational contexts or stories. But it's all about the life of Emma. I'm saying it has to be about the life of Emma.
Okay, I have to think about this. a bit longer. But thank you for.
So would you see a scenario where you take Babylon and Israel and, for example, they're friends? Random example that came into my mind.
Well, can you also take the
Sorry,
symbol?
George.
Oh, sorry.
It was a question directed to Curtis.
I'll think about the principle and not the example in offline.
Okay, that's fine.
Blessing, if you want to go through the other two examples, we
Uh-huh.
can give another slot very soon if you need to finish QFMG.
Okay,
I think it'd be
that's okay.
useful.
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh,
That's fine.
Nyasha and Ignatius have their hand up.
Yes, yeah, sure, Ignatius, go ahead.
Hi, Blessing.
Hi, Ignatius.
All right. So I think I'm sorry, I'm slow. So with regards to the subject, the panoramic view, how I understood it from when it started, it was pointing at the seven kingdoms of Bible prophecy from Babylon to the seventh, is it?
Mm-hmm.
And in that view, there is no they are sort of passing a baton stick to the other, like Babylon passes baton stick to Medo-Persia to Greece up to the seventh kingdom. So now, with regards to this view we have on the board, do we have the same model where that 70-year captivity of Babylon, the one you put it in the first box, it passes a baton stick to another story which has the same characteristics or the same properties based on a certain theme up until we get to the time of the end. Then when we get to the time of the end, we say now the rules are now changing because this is the time of the end. Then we are able to sort of thread the story, or we have breaks in between, like we have the Babylonian captivity, then somewhere in between there's no story of any captivity happening. Then we get to a certain point in history where the same story is repeating with the same properties or the same theme. I hope you understand my question, is it? So, yeah.
So, okay, what I'll do is I'll briefly share my understanding of the kingdoms, the seven kingdoms. So at the beginning here we have Babylon. And then at the end, I'll just call it the seventh kingdom. I don't want to get into the details of these kingdoms. And my understanding of panoramic, which could be wrong, is that this is all about one kingdom, one beast, which is, we'll call it Satan's kingdom. So you are tracing the life cycle of Satan's kingdom. And this is its start, and this is its end. We're together so far. And the kingdom of Satan is going to go through, like you said, various iterations. And in the panoramic view, you're not focusing so much on the repetition of things as you are focusing on the development of things. which is why here we mention the word progressive, that you're progressively threading or developing a story. So if you think of, where is that? The life of Elder Emma. She's born here. She's an adult at the end. So she's developing in between. It's not focusing on repeating things, repetition of things. So similarly, when you're talking about Satan's kingdom here, you've got Babylon here. You've got, somewhere here, you've got, I'll say Rome, and so on and so forth. So you've got different um, versions of Satan's kingdom until you get to the end. So this would be a similar concept when you look at the story of, I'm calling it Babylon, but you can take Satan's kingdom fighting God's kingdom. So they start fighting here and they continue fighting throughout this history. If you picture two armies in a war, but they'll have different battles. You have the battle of, like the Battle of Kabini, for example, the Battle of Gaza, the Battle of Heraclea. These are different battles in a much larger war that's going on here. So, yes, something is the same from start to finish. They're fighting, but the nature of the battles, the details of the battles, the outcomes of the battles in between here don't necessarily have to be the same. They'll be different. And the structure, the operations of the different governments that represent Satan's kingdom here won't be the same. They'll be different. And also, that detail can help you to understand something about the kingdom at the end or the seventh. So I think the example that's been given in presentations done by Elder Pamenda, by Curtis, yeah, I think those two, I don't know if anyone else has done it, is Daniel 3 as an example, where in Babylon, you've got a civil war that goes on, where a fight within the Babylonian government. And in this war, you've got Nebuchadnezzar at war or fighting against the institutions of his own government. So just say versus government. But what we mean by government is, the three boys. The outcome in this story is Nebuchadnezzar is not successful in dealing with the opposition in his government. But when you get to the end, the outcome is different. Because when you get to the end, the seventh kingdom, I won't get into the explaining how they arrived at it, but that number seven, which is a symbol or story of perfection, what you've arrived at here is the perfection of Satan's government, and it's represented by Trump. Again, I'll say versus government. And where Nebuchadnezzar failed here, Satan really is the one that failed to get their objective, right? There was failure here. The outcome here is different. There's success. So if you are to look at events of Trump fighting the government, what you shouldn't expect is the people who are dissenting to be successful because you've reached the end. I don't know if that helps answering your question, Ignatius.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
It does. Thank you.
All right.
Imba and Melania have a question. The hand up. Sorry.
Okay. I'm looking at the time. Could this be the last question? Will this be the last question?
Yes. Oh, so
Then,
you're going to finish in a minute with that.
yeah, we can always pick it. I've recognized people have interest in this, so we'll pick it up again another time. Maybe we'll actually look at these other two examples as well. It might be beneficial.
But
before we get back
look,
to
Curtis had 2 hours last.
QFMG. I don't want to burden. I don't want it to be too heavy cognitively. I want to be sure that people at least go away with some points that have been understood. Yes, Simba or Melania.
Okay, mine wasn't a question necessarily. It was just maybe trying to explain what you just explained in
Okay.
answering to Ignatius. So because of time, I think I won't be able to say it, but actually that's the same thing that you said that you described in this previous explanation you gave.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
That's all right then. Thank you. So we'll just do a recap of what we have been able to cover, which is mainly review. We have reviewed what we looked at and then spend a bit more time on the first example, which we looked at. So why I looked at these three examples in my study in Wales was to try and look into the methodology of going into history, taking a symbol out of its immediate context and applying it elsewhere. And when you apply it, you will not necessarily apply it at the equivalent waymark or set of waymarks, right? And I said the reason why these prophets could do it is to whatever extent they recognized that the stories that were fulfilling in their time and that had been written in scriptures before them were the same. With Jacob's Time of Trouble and Ellen White, with Rachel weeping and Matthew chapter 2, and with Pentecost and the book of Joel. And what it allowed them to do is ignore a lot of details from that immediate context. And then, quick summary on Acts 27 and the story of 273 and how that relates to a story, a theme of transfer of leadership, of power. You see it in Acts 27 and you see it in the story of 273 BC with the rise of Rome. QFMG being the symbol of that kingdom, you can actually take QFMG and he can tell you something about the rise of the seventh kingdom. So that's what we looked at in Wales. And then today I wanted to expand a bit more on what I meant when I said the story has to be the same. That it's not just a general recognition of similarity, it's actually identifying the story as the same. So I borrowed terms from Elder Paminda's study about panoramic and dispensational. He spoke of it within the context of the kingdoms. And then I used it in the story of Jeremiah 30 in the time of Jacob's trouble. The example we gave is that of Elder Emma. If you want to trace the life of Elder Emma panoramically, uh, what has to happen is the person has to be the same. So you have to have the same, you're talking about the same entity from start to finish. In this case, Elder Emma, she has to be the same from start to finish. But when you get into dispensational details, you get into more specific things like her teenage years, or as an infant, or her experience as a new parent, or as an elder of this movement. And as you get into those dispensational, specific, time sensitive details, there's things about her childhood that could tell you something that you could take and apply, and there's things that you can't. So you have to leave them. Um, so then we looked at the details of the captivity. And I said what you have is Israel and Babylon at war. They had war for two reasons that the Bible gives, one being the broken covenant, called it the 2520, and the other being the great controversy between Christ and Satan. And I said you can picture it as a slider where you have a range from start to finish, and then you can move the slider in one direction or the other. And where it lands will determine the details that you consider, pay attention to. But the point is, you can actually move it and put it in an arbitrary position. So, therefore, you're not limited to taking the story of Jacob in trouble in the captivity and limited to putting it in a time where God's people are in captivity. You can put it in a time where God's people are not in captivity because your panoramic view, your story is the same. You're telling the story of Babylon and Israel in conflict. Um, Babylon obviously won't look the same. Israel won't look the same. The conflict will not look the same. It's just generically the conflict is it's still the same conflict, but the details will not look the same because of the dispensation you're in. So your structure will actually look different. So you're ignoring captivity now, which was your original structure, and you are telling it within a different context or in a different structure where God's people get the upper hand and they gain the victory. Then Ignatius asked the question, which I think was helpful, about the seven kingdoms, Revelation 17, the panoramic view being the story of Satan's kingdom. So this is the life cycle of Satan's kingdom from its start to its finish. And there's things that it can teach you. So it will look different in different times, but it's developing throughout this time. And one simple lesson I think you can gather from it is Satan wasn't very successful in dealing with uh, institutional dissent at the beginning. He's mastered it at the end. And we'll leave it at that. Next time, we'll look at the other two examples. But remember, what we're building at is trying to show that you can take QFMG out of its immediate context as a symbol and apply it. You don't have to apply it at the exact way mark where you found it in the original history. You can use your slider to place it in different points, and some details will be relevant and others won't be. And with that, we'll close with a prayer. Let's pray. Dear God, we come before you at the end of the study, thanking you for the time you've given us together to discuss a bit more about methodology, how we study, so that, Lord, it might give us confidence in the applications that this movement has made and even that prophets in the past have made that show that we are in the right direction and that you are leading as well in all these different histories. May it give us more confidence that we will come to a knowledge of the truth of the different waymarks that are still to unfold and that we are yet to understand. And give us the experience we need, Lord, to fulfill prophecy on the right side of the issue. Pray that you might continue to be with us as we contemplate these themes and others in these sacred hours. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.